Zhang Yi has almost forgotten what the last time he was so insightful by another being was. Seeing the chaotic scene on the other side of the eyeball man, Zhang Yi burst out laughing. He knew that this boy must have seen something that he dared not see. At the same time, he definitely knew the identities of himself and others. "Boss, what's wrong with you, boss? What happened, boss, are you okay?" Several strong men immediately surrounded him and helped the eyeball man who was caught in endless madness. But they soon discovered that the eyeball man's condition was much more serious than they imagined. His huge eyeballs were covered with ferocious bloodshot eyes, and huge pain shrouded his body, making his whole body tremble. In involuntary spasms. "Stop, stop. Please." The eyeball man wailed, and he suddenly broke away from the support of several strong men, turned around, picked up the broken wine glass from the ground, and stabbed it straight into his huge eyeball. Unfortunately, his movements were quickly stopped by other security guards, and even the wine glass was taken away. As Eyeball Man's subordinates, they naturally couldn't watch Eyeball Man suddenly go crazy and harm himself. "Help me! Help me!" The Eyeball Man grabbed the security guard closest to him, and the huge force even left several scratches on the strong man's arm. "Boss, what's wrong with you?" The strong man endured the pain in his body and asked the person with eyeballs. When the other guests around him saw this, they all dispersed and stayed away from the eyeball person. A few mercenaries who were close to the gate even took advantage of the chaos and ran away. The eyeball man calmed down for a while, and then he stopped from the endless madness just now and experienced a short period of peace. Immediately afterwards, the eyeball man struggled to point in the direction of Zhang Yi and the others. "Don't let them get close to me. It's him, the speedster, and they're here." Upon hearing this, the expressions of everyone present changed instantly. The girls on the stage had stopped dancing long ago, and the mercenaries who came here to relax and enjoy themselves had no intention of having fun. Countless eyes focused on Zhang Yi and the others, their eyes full of horror and disbelief. "Well." Zhang Yi sighed helplessly, murmured while playing with the wine bottle in his hand. "The food hasn't been served yet." The strong men took action one after another, blocking all the escape routes of Zhang Yi and others in an encircling formation. They held daggers and spurs in their hands, and some even took out pistols. "Guys, I advise you to just let it go. Although I don't know what you did, you have angered my boss. This matter is obviously not easy to solve." A leading strong man walked in front of Zhang Yi and looked down on him. Said. "It seems you didn't understand what your boss meant." Zhang Yi said casually, then he looked at Pietro and Carla and spoke in an extremely relaxed tone. "You can't reveal your identity. Except for the big eyes, no one else is left." "What are you talking about, Dash?" Before the strong man could react, he immediately lost his breath. The last thing he saw in his eyes was a silvery light, and what was left was a biting chill. Zhang Ye's words can be said to have lifted the restrictions on Pietro and Carla. The two little guys could no longer suppress their inner anger. Following Zhang Ye's order, Pietro took the lead and made it out of vibranium. Every wave of his arms can end a living life. There was no way these strong men might be able to threaten ordinary people, but facing Pietro, a speedster, they would not have any ability to resist. Coupled with Pietro's background, this kid has never known the meaning of letting go since he was a child. Every time he takes a shot, it is a killing move. The speed that is difficult to distinguish with the naked eye allows him to easily attack the enemy's vital points. As for Kara, she suddenly raised her head and shot two heat vision towards the mercenaries who were preparing to escape from this place of right and wrong. Although her combat effectiveness has been greatly weakened by the influence of the sun in this world, and her heat vision cannot exert its previous powerful destructive power, it is enough to face these ordinary people. Anyone who came into contact with this sight burst like a bubble, and scarlet blood spread all over the ground and painted the walls, which looked extremely dazzling under the flickering lights here. Although the girls in the heroine uniforms had seen dead people, these little canaries kept captive by the eyeball man had never seen such a bloody scene. They screamed, and some even wanted to escape to the background. "Which crow, them?" Pietro did not call out Zhang Yi's name when there were outsiders. This was taught to him by the Moonlight Knight. "Leave no one behind." Zhang Yi poured himself wine slowly without raising his head. In the wasteland, kindness is a cheap thing. You can hardly sell it for a few dollars, and you may even pay for it with your own life. If you want to build a new city-state in this world full of despair and chaos, the first thing you have to do is to completely destroy the world. This symbolizes the sprout of hope that breaks out from the ruins. It didn't take much effort, and after just one glass of wine, the entire nightclub became dead silent. Apart from Zhang Yi and the other three, the only person left alive was the eyeball man. Zhang Yi picked up the wine glass, stood up and came to the eyeball person. The other party was already frightened out of his wits. He collapsed and retreated repeatedly, only to find that he was already leaning against the wall, unable to retreat. "Spare me, please spare me, God, I really don't know anything. I haven't asked yet." Zhang Yi smiled and snorted, then he knelt down and asked calmly. I'm curious, what did you see in your eyes just now? I said, can you let me go? Eyeball man didn't dare to look directly at Zhang Yi. He stretched out his arms in front of him, curled up and trembling slightly. Hearing this, Zhang Yi did not answer directly, but drank all the wine in the glass. If you don't tell me, I will kill you directly. I said. Eyeball man was terrified and said quickly. I don't know you, and I've never met you, but I know him, the speedster. I remember his name, Quicksilver. I saw him running on the street in his suit. I saw him chasing a black shadow. That's all. Zhang Yi frowned, his face unhappy. And that woman. The eyeball man raised his finger again and pointed to Kara's position, and continued. I saw her wearing a red and blue suit and a red cape. I didn't see much. That's all I knew. I swear. This is an interesting result. Listening to the eyeball man's story, Zhang Yi's eyes narrowed slightly. Although he knew that the DC universe and the Marvel universe were quite connected and relatively close to each other. Some of the Marvel universes even had comics depicting the DC universe, but this was the first time Zhang Yi had heard such an intuitive statement. Arrive. Did you see her wearing a red and blue battle suit and a red cloak with your own eyes? Zhang Yi asked again. Yes, no, it doesn't count as seeing it with my own eyes. My ability is not used like that. It is the observer's eyes that help me. With the help of that thing, I can see something I don't know. It's like there's an extra memory in my mind. Eyeball man replied loudly, fearing that he might say something wrong and cause the other party to be dissatisfied. Hearing this, Zhang Yi nodded thoughtfully. Indeed, as Eyeball man said, this criminal who was born with deformities does not have particularly powerful abilities. Strictly speaking, among the villains of Ghost Rider, Eyeball man is not even a first-line character. Some of the young Avengers who just debuted, they can easily subdue him. The only powerful thing about the eyeball man is the eye of the observer. After all, the owner of this eyeball is one of the oldest races in the Marvel universe and possesses terrifying power. The number of years that the observer's technology is ahead of the entire universe cannot even be calculated. Their tribe believes that all their knowledge and power belongs to the entire universe, so they once went to a planet where civilization had just been established and generously passed on their knowledge. Gave it to the other party. But the final result was that the planet's rapid technological advancement led to the accelerated corruption of civilization until the entire planet was destroyed. It is precisely because of this incident that the observers decided that they would not participate in the events of any life form in the universe, but would instead witness and record everything as bystanders. And their favorite place is undoubtedly the Earth, the center of the universe. Among other things, they will definitely enjoy watching the various major events here. After the interventionist of this universe, after the observer was murdered, one of his eyeballs fell on the eyeball man's hand and merged with it. At this time, the eyeball man also had a certain ability of the observer, insight into reality. What the observer's eye can usually see are those major events that are enough to change the world. With this ability, the observer can easily see those major events that are about to happen or have not happened yet, and observe some things that can be used. Clues. And this may also be a way for villains in this world to easily obtain ways to kill superheroes. I almost forgot that you have such a good thing. Zhang Yi smiled. He really didn't expect that the eyeball man could directly see Kara's true form through the observer's eye. It was no wonder that it was not difficult to see Supergirl Kara with eyes that could see into parallel universes. What are you going to do? Seeing the calmness in Zhang Yi's eyes, the person with the eyeball instinctively felt a sense of uneasiness, and a biting chill immediately filled his back. It's such a waste to put something of this level on you. I think it's better to leave it to me to use. Zhang Yi said calmly, and immediately he stretched out his hands regardless of the reaction of the eyeball man. A strange force struck, and the eyeball man was instantly imprisoned in place, and slowly floated up. No. Don't kill me. Only I can use the power of the observer's eye. I can help you. I swear never to betray you. The eyeball man struggled desperately. Although Zhang Ye's magic ability was not strong at this time, it was more than enough for an ordinary person like him. No matter how hard he struggled, Zhang Ye's power could still trap him firmly. Sorry, you have to keep good things in your own hands before you feel safe. Besides, this is not a city club. Maybe you didn't personally participate in the massacre of the heroes, but your hands are already stained with blood. No. Ah. The forbidden incantation came from Zhang Yi's mouth. This was the magic he realized when he mastered the separation of reality. In a sense, it can be regarded as his own creation. I saw the chest of the eyeball man burst open, and the scene of blood bursting out that everyone expected did not appear. It was as if an invisible force had firmly controlled it. Soon, an eyeball as big as a basketball gradually emerged from the eyeball. The person's chest slowly emerged, with some viscous blood and muscle tissue connected to it. Pietro looked at Carla and made a retching motion, causing Carla to roll her eyes. However, the two of them did not disturb Zhang Yi at this time. Casting magic is a matter that requires concentration and must not be subject to any interference, otherwise it will have a great impact. This is the eye of the observer, Zhang Yi muttered to himself as he looked at the eyeballs that were no different from those of ordinary people. This is a good thing, no matter for any force. Zhang Yi was very surprised as to why a group of treacherous and cunning villains would let the eyeball man have such a powerful treasure. You know, this thing is no weaker than the eye of Agamotto. Doctor Strange can use the eye of Agamotto to release powerful magic, and this eyeball can naturally do the same, even more powerful than the eye of Agamotto. Such an excellent thing would be priceless in the hands of anyone with a magical side, but those villains who committed all kinds of evil turned a blind eye, and instead allowed the eyeball people to live with this treasure for decades. Is it true that as the eyeball man said, this observer's eye has established a connection with him and only he can use it? Thinking of this, Zhang Yi shook his head. Impossible. Any magical object or even the organ of a powerful being can be made into a magic weapon. Those rare products that carry powerful power can even be made into artifacts. This eyeball cannot be used. It's just that the magic ability in his hand is not strong enough. As the screams of the eyeball man became weaker and weaker, the observer's eye gradually revealed its true form, and at the same time it was completely peeled off from the eyeball man's chest. Feeling the unprecedented power coming from his eyeballs, Zhang Yi nodded. Instead of wasting this eyeball on this waste, it would be better for him to make a powerful artifact. Anyway, even if he doesn't take it, the old bull's eye at the back will take the observer's eye out of the eyeball man's body. However, if you want to make this thing into an artifact, the magic energy required will probably not be much lower. With just a simple contact, Zhang Yi discovered that with the energy he had at the moment, let alone making this eyeball into an artifact, he couldn't even simply control it. It seems that only after your own time controller records this universe so that you can truly extract energy from this universe, can you have enough magic power to refining this game. After waving his hand to bring the observer's eye into his magic space, Zhang Yi once again set his sights on the body of the eyeball man who will not rest in peace. Zhang, what should we do next? Pietro looked around, looking at the corpses on the ground, and said slowly. Hearing this, Zhang Yi thought for a moment and then spoke. This should be the territory of the Red Skull. If anyone finds out that this nightclub has been stolen, then the Red Skull will definitely arrange for someone to come and investigate. Let's leave here first. Why, isn't the Red Skull a little stronger than ordinary people? Although I can't exert my previous strength now, we are not afraid of him, so why should we avoid him? Kara asked with some confusion. You know, when she made a big fuss at the Hydra base and ordered various villains, the Red Skull didn't even dare to fart. How could everything be reversed in another world? Hearing Kara's words, Zhang Yi also smiled softly. Kara, we are indeed not afraid of him, but some things cannot be solved solely by fighting. Do you know why I don't want our identities to be exposed? Kara shook her head. The reason is very simple. You can see the spring and autumn by observing a leaf, and you can see the vast ocean by observing a drop of water. From this small nightclub, we can know how bad the world's environment is. If we expose our identity, what will happen to us in the future? There will be an endless pursuit by all the villains. Seeing that Kara was still half-informed, Zhang Yi continued. Maybe those guys are old, maybe they are not as strong as us, but you have to know that there are still many beings in this world that can pose a threat to us. I have heard that a thief can be a thief in 1,000 days, but there is no reason to guard against a thief in 1,000 days, hiding in the dark is more advantageous for us. Zhang Yi has not forgotten that swallowing stars will come to the earth soon. A being of that level, let alone Kara at this time, even in her prime, will never be a match for that kind of existence. I understand, just like what you did before, right? Only by hiding from everyone's eyes can you plan an excellent strategy. Pietro said. Seeing Zhang Yi nodded in approval of his words, Pietro turned around and raised his eyebrows at Kara. Okay, I understand. Kara nodded thoughtfully. She was just overwhelmed by anger. After calming down, she quickly reacted. It's good to understand. In my impression, this place should be on the outskirts of Hammerfall City, but I'm not sure which direction it is. There should be a map here. Please go look for it. Zhang Yi thought for a moment. Then he ordered. As soon as Zhang Ying finished speaking, Pietro's figure shook slightly. The next moment, a shabby map appeared in his hand. In addition, he also held a leg of lamb in his other hand. Good job. Zhang Yi took the map and said casually. Pietro, you seem to be getting faster and faster. Isn't my two hands now sound? Now I can run at full speed, and I no longer have to worry about being unable to maintain my balance. Pietro said confidently. Zhang Yi put his eyes on the map and confirmed the situation nearby. At the same time, he said pointedly without raising his eyes. You'd better be careful and watch your heart. I know. Pietro was stunned for a moment. Perhaps Pietro's abilities are getting stronger and his experiences are getting more and more exciting, which makes him subconsciously forget about his tragic origin and the crisis in his body. He is not the real Quicksilver, he is just a criminal locked up in a mutant prison. Compared with those outstanding mutants in other worlds, the abilities he has acquired are more like a curse than a gift. After leaving the original universe full of despair and experiencing so many things, Pietro had forgotten his hidden dangers. He began to regard himself as a superhero and established a new persona for himself, a Quicksilver who has new abilities and enjoys the love of everyone. But Zhang Ye's words at this moment were like a basin of cold water poured on his head, bringing him back to reality. Only then did he realize that he was not a superhero or Quicksilver, he was just a patient. Sensing that Pietro's expression was not good, Zhang Yi also instantly saw Pietro's inner thoughts. He took the map back and patted Pietro on the shoulder. Don't think too much, you are not anyone, you are you, never run away from this, as for your heart, I will find a way. Yeah. Pietro nodded seriously. After patting Pietro and Carla's shoulders heavily again, Zhang Yi gave them both a firm look and then spoke. Next, let's go to Hammerfell City. That place is not far from here. With luck, we can get there before it gets too dark. The three of them walked out of the nightclub. Pietro asked curiously. Zhang, why is that city called Hammerfall City? Zhang Yi didn't explain this, just sighed softly. I'll tell you when I get there. Hammerfell, Nevada. Pietro didn't have to wait too long. The sun set, and before the sun sank into the horizon, the three of them arrived within the confines of Hammerfell City. The first ones to be targeted were undoubtedly the well-known superheroes. Captain America, Iron Man, and Spider-Man were the first to die. Later, heroes everywhere were attacked by criminals, and here Magneto ruined the heroes' last hope. Along the way, Zhang Yi was telling Pietro and Carla what the Earth in this universe had gone through before it was reduced to a wasteland. The Avengers team, located on the west coast of Eagle Country, is a branch of the Avengers. They are also the only remaining superheroes at that time. This is where they were finally destroyed. Finally, the three of them stopped at the famous attraction in Hammerfell City. In the center of a simple square, an old and dilapidated one-handed hammer stood quietly on the ground. You see, this is the origin of Hammerfell. That is. Pietro recognized the identity of the one-handed hammer at a glance. Although he had not actually seen Thor with his own eyes, he still had a certain understanding of this being called a god. That's the real deal. Yes, it's the genuine Thor's hammer. Zhang Yi murmured in a low voice that in his memory, Thor was beaten to death by the absorbers. At that time, none of the superheroes expected that Magneto would suddenly kill him, not even his daughter Scarlet Witch. After Magneto killed his own daughter while she was unaware of her reaction, he transferred his own magnetism and Scarlet Witch's magic to the absorbing person. After controlling such great power, his ability to absorb people instantly broke through the sky, and his physical strength was even close to that of Thor, the god of thunder. At the same time, he used the secret energy of chaos magic to absorb Thor's divine power, and with one last punch, he would be alive. Thor slew him here. Thor's body has long been recovered by criminals, but no one can shake his hammer, so it is left here, waiting for the next person with a righteous heart to lift it and obtain the hammer that belongs to Thor. All divine power. Around Thor's hammer, people spontaneously placed various wreaths, gifts, and many beautiful lanterns and candles, which were very bright at night. What are these? Carla asked, looking at the wreaths and candles. These are left by people who come here to pray or pray. They hope that those superheroes can reappear, just like before, put on uniforms, come back from the dead, or that someone will inherit their qualities. Stand up and resist the oppression of those criminals. After hearing Zhang Yi's flat reply, Kara couldn't help but ask. Don't those criminals care? Since these people are trying to pray for the hero's return, then the criminal leaders who are in charge of this place won't turn a blind eye, right? It's not that simple. Zhang Yi shook his head. They did it on purpose, to leave people with a glimmer of hope, so that these people would be more obedient. I have to say, the Red Skull's trick is quite beautiful, and he can understand people's hearts. As he spoke, Zhang Yi walked past the wreaths and candles and came to the front of Mjolnir. Feeling the power that had been dormant for decades in Mjolnir, Zhang Yi smiled sarcastically. Let those ordinary people not give up hope and come here to pray every day. This is to let these ordinary people still put their hope on those elusive heroes. If everyone thinks so, then this place will never be the same in this life. No one is qualified to lift Mjolnir. Thor's hammer represents protection. Only those with noble character and willingness to die for others will be qualified to be recognized by Thor's hammer. Just like the sentence Asgard means people, if they cannot understand the meaning, these people will undoubtedly continue to be controlled and played by the Red Skull stupidly. I understand, so this place was actually probably designed by the Red Skull. He could not only use this place as his original accomplishment, but he could also use this place to control the beliefs and public opinion among the people. Pietro thought said. Hearing this, Zhang Yi couldn't help but glance at Pietro in surprise. This guy was becoming more and more clever at using his brain. Then, Zhang Yi opened his mouth and added to him. You can still make money. This is the most popular tourist attraction in the world. Countless people visit here every day. Can't we lift this hammer? This thing looks quite powerful. If we can lift it, maybe our combat effectiveness can be improved a lot, right? Kara's eyes were fixed on the hammer. I feel that this hammer can hurt me. Unfortunately, none of the three of us can match the recognition of this broken hammer. Zhang Yi chuckled, shook his head, and then continued. But if you want to lift the hammer, you don't have to follow its rules. As long as you have enough ability to circumvent Odin's spell, you can get the hammer's recognition. Then what are you waiting for? Let's start now. Pietro was eager to try, but the next moment, his head was flicked by Zhang. I'm not that powerful. Odin in his heyday was a powerful being that shook the entire universe. Even if he dies now, the power he left behind cannot be shaken by ordinary people. Besides, why should I pick it up? Am I going to announce the birth of a new Thor to all the villains? Same. Pietro smiled coquettishly. There is nothing worth missing here anymore. Let's find a place to stay nearby. We will have a lot of time to collect some treasures here. They randomly found a motel that looked good, and Zhang Yi and others checked in. With the ability to magically transform gold, Zhang Yi could save a lot of effort. Lying on the bed, Zhang Yi recalled the plot in a comic while making plans for his next actions. In the wasteland world, although most of the heroes have died and most of the villains have become old, weak, sick and disabled, this does not mean that there is no fighting power here. Whether it is Doom's robot or the Sentry robots owned by Baron Zemo are all very powerful. It would still be very troublesome to be targeted by those guys, not to mention that in addition to them, there is also the Red Skull, a guy called the Leader. In addition to the army, he also has many powerful desperados. With so many people joining forces, it would be troublesome even for you to deal with it yourself. Thinking of this, Zhang Yi couldn't help but sigh. The Star-Lord in this universe is really lucky. When Star-Lord came to the wasteland, it happened to be the time when Twilight Wolf traveled to the main universe. At that point in time, Baron Zemo, Bullseye and all the traitors from the Thunderbolts died at the hands of Hawkeye. The Red Tank was thrown off the cliff by the old Daredevil and could not climb up for several years. The Red Skull and Hulk where Wolverine Logan was killed, and the entire Eagle Kingdom was in chaos. It is precisely because of this that Star-Lord was not attacked by a group of villains. Otherwise, he would have been wiped out by these villains long ago. But in this case, the Earth is also doomed. After all, the ability of the Red Skull and his gang cannot stop the arrival of the Church and Galactus. Zhang Yi couldn't help but sigh when he thought of Galactus. An existence of that level is far beyond what he can defeat now. It seems that he must find ways to improve his combat effectiveness as soon as possible before that guy comes, and at the same time, he must find ways to increase the Earth's response measures. Thanks for the reward, thanks to Langlin and Jafatshai for their support, and also to other friends who voted for support. Thank you all. South Dakota, Grand Canyon. The mounted police, established under the leadership of the Red Skull, is handling the crime scene here. Earlier, the mounted police received a tip, and after arranging the police to investigate, they found several corpses inside the canyon, but strangely, these corpses all had the same face. What do you think happened, Sheriff? A young police officer asked curiously. It seems that you don't know much about the situation here. This guy's name is Jamie Madrock. He is an old man on the wanted list. Rumor has it that he was a member of the X-Men in the early years, but now this old madman often robbed passing merchants around here, the older police chief said. Chief, what are the X-Men? The young police officer was confused. Hearing this, the police chief was stunned for a moment. Immediately, his expression darkened and he cursed at the police officer. Does it have anything to do with you? Why don't you dig a hole and bury these ghosts quickly? Don't delay me from drinking. Okay. The little police officer trembled for a moment, then hurriedly took action. He didn't know why the old police chief suddenly became so angry, but what he knew was that his family had sacrificed everything for this job, so he must not arouse the old police chief's disgust, otherwise his family would suffer. Ruined. X-Men. Suddenly, a strange voice came from behind the two mounted policemen, attracting their attention. They are a group of superheroes who stick to justice and bring hope to people. In their team, everyone has extremely powerful superpowers. When they are in glory, all the villains have to hide in the dark corners. Don't dare to show your head. Who are you? You dare to illegally invade the crime scene we are dealing with. The old police chief swore angrily and said viciously. But the man didn't react at all. Instead, he looked at the collected corpses. Our murderer used 8 arrows to target 8 members of the Madrock gang. Then he shot them out quickly, killing all the clones here, killing them with one blow. You know, the clone's the only weak point is his head, hitting him on other parts will not kill him, it will only make him continue to clone himself. I won't ask you a third time, who are you? The old police chief's hand had already touched the gun on his waist. At this time, the man stood up and slowly took off his hat, revealing his face. No offense, troopers. It was an old, bald man with a ferocious bullseye mark on his forehead. The old man had a mustache. The upper left side of his face had been modified mechanically, and he wore a metal lens on his left eye. It exudes a faint red light. Oh. God. When the old police chief and the young police officer saw each other's true face, their eyes widened in disbelief. At the same time, they immediately put their guns back into their waists. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize your identity just now, respected Marshal. Lord Bullseye. No need to apologize, Sheriff. Old Bullseye grinned with an ecstatic smile, as if he was so happy and excited for the first time in his life. You didn't recognize me because not everyone is lucky enough to talk to me, and today, my friend, we are all lucky. Because, dear Sheriff, this was not done by robbers or businessmen at all, it was done by someone we haven't seen for a long time, the work of a superhero. Hammerfell City, early morning. The newly born sun burned itself hard, spreading the light that symbolized hope as much as possible over this wasteland. Zhang Yi got up very early, or in other words, in this world, it was difficult for him to fall asleep peacefully. The same goes for Kara, she doesn't even dare to let go of her senses, because even though her 5 senses have been weakened a lot, she can still clearly detect the crime scenes around the hotel, as well as the prayers and wailings of the victims. Perhaps, only Pietro can sleep peacefully in this situation. After all, as long as Zhang Yi is by his side, this kid will be in a state of extreme peace of mind. What is our plan? Kara asked curiously. Don't worry, Carla, you and Pietro stay here well. If you are hungry, you can eat the fast food I left in the closet. Zhang Yi said calmly. How about you? I'm going to meet an old friend in the neighborhood. Old friend? Kara frowned. She didn't think Zhang Yi would know any friends in this wasteland, but she quickly realized it. One of the heroes who survived those criminals. Hearing this, Zhang Yi nodded. So he survived, but I'm not sure what his current condition is, so it's best not to let him see you, especially Pietro. Zhang Yi's target for this trip is Hawkeye Barton. According to the timeline, Hawkeye has not yet started his revenge, but he has no fixed address and it is not easy to find him. Fortunately, he is here. There was a family in Hammerfell, his ex-wife opened a car repair shop here. Barton's ex-wife is Spider-Man Peter Parker's youngest daughter, a black woman named Tanya Parker. Although she is Spider-Man's child, she did not inherit Spider-Man's superpowers. As for Eagle Eye, he has been driven mad by hatred for so many years. Whenever he closes his eyes, he will see Natasha dying in his arms. This makes him suffer every night. You can choose to get drunk and drown your sorrows. After experiencing such a huge blow and torture, Hawkeye had forgotten everything at this time. He only thought about one thing in his mind, and that was to take revenge on the villains of the year. For this, he did not hesitate to everything was on the line. Along the way, he had already given up his identity as a hero. Barton chose to be the enemy of the world and fired the first shot of resistance. Under his almost crazy actions, the wasteland including the second-generation Hawkeye and others many people were affected, and he even indirectly killed Wolverine's family. Therefore, for such an old man who would do whatever it takes to get revenge, and even died for it in the end, Zhang Yi was still unable to judge the mental state of the other party, let alone take Carla and Pietro with him. You know, the Quicksilver of this world was sacrificed in front of Hawkeye Barton. Standing quietly outside Tanya's auto repair shop, Zhang Yi stared closely at the environment inside, including the surrounding passers-by and the customers coming in and out of the auto repair shop. Zhang Yi even saw the Ultron robot responsible for repairs. But unfortunately, Zhang Yi did not see the eagle-eyed Barton here. It seemed that Barton was not here at this time. At this moment, a crisp voice suddenly sounded behind Zhang Yi. Are you a pervert? You keep staring at my house. Chapter 135 Ashley Barton. Are you a pervert? You keep staring at my house. Hearing the sound, Zhang Yi slowly turned his head. What caught his eye was a somewhat heroic little black mixed-race girl with short hair. Judging from her age, she was probably only 15 or 16 years old, and her identity was confirmed by Zhang Yi at the first sight of her. Came down. She is Hawkeye's daughter and Spider-Man's granddaughter, Ashley Barton. Completely different from her peers in a normal worldview, Ashley is very flashy or rebellious. This can be seen from her clothes full of crazy words, as well as her unusual hairstyle and earrings. It was unimaginable how Ashley's guardian educated her into a little girl. Looking at her appearance at this time, Zhang Yi thought she was a member of the gang reserve team, the kind who could go to work with a gun at any time. Don't get me wrong, little girl, I don't have any ill intentions towards your family. I'm here to find your father, but he is elusive, so I can only try my luck here. Zhang Yi said casually, not caring about the offense in Ashley's words. To be honest, children who grew up in this chaotic wasteland have basically lost most of their humanity. It is tantamount to wishful thinking to expect such people to know what politeness is. When people cannot change the world, they can only try their best to adapt to the world. In this deformed society where children are exchanged for food, we should not expect that there will be some kind-hearted people who emerge from the mud and remain untouched, because this kind of people there is no way to survive here. I'm disappointed. Although I have a being called father, I will never call him that. And now, I guess that old guy is escorting white powder somewhere. Ashley said coldly. But if you want to contact him, I guess you have a way, right? Zhang Yi said with a smile. Expletive, what is your purpose? Ashley's cold eyes showed murderous intent. Sensing this look, Zhang Yi couldn't help but let out a breath. It seemed that this wasteland world was really a good place to train people. Zhang Yi would not deny at all that if he did something outrageous, the next moment, this little girl will take action and give herself a hard blow. What should I say? Is she worthy of being the sinful queen of the future wasteland? By then, your dad and your grandpa's spirits must be very happy, right? Believe me girl, the dagger you hide in your waist will not pose any threat to me. I think the alarm of your extremely weak spider sense should be enough to remind you, right? Hearing this, Ashley's pupils shrank, and she seemed a little surprised. Indeed, the fact that she inherited Spider-Man's superpowers from another generation has always been her secret and she has never mentioned it to anyone. But at this moment, the guy who met him for the first time said it casually, which was enough to make the young Ashley panic. However, she quickly forced herself to calm down. Are you one of those mind-reading mutant freaks? You really deserve some discipline. This is the last time I will tolerate you. If you are rude next time, I will educate you on behalf of your guardian. Zhang Ye's expression was calm, but it put great pressure on Ashley, but then, Zhang Yi continued. However, you guessed wrong. I am just an ordinary person. I am friends with your father. This time, Ashley was indeed much more honest, although her expression was still as repulsive as before. He hasn't been here for a long time. This is not his home. He only comes here once every few years. At this moment, Ultron 8 walked out of the auto repair shop. This guy has actually been paying attention to the situation here. He saw Zhang Yi early in the morning, but adhering to the principle of doing more than doing less, Ultron number 8 did not come forward to talk. But now, seeing that Ashley was communicating with that guy, and her face was getting worse and worse, Ultron 8 had to come out. Hey, friend, what are you doing? Ultron's electronic voice was heavy, but his tone was quite human. This guy is here to find my mother's ex-husband. Ashley said immediately when she saw her elder coming out. Is that so, sir? Ultron 8 looked at Zhang Yi doubtfully. There was no impression of Zhang Yi on his computer, so he still remained wary of Zhang Yi. After all, Hawkeye has been doing dirty work for a while. It is very common for him to provoke any enemies outside, and his original enemies are not that few. Yes, Barton and I are friends, and there are some, very important things that I want to discuss with him. Zhang Yi thought about it for a moment, and then said. Hearing this, Ultron's electronic eyes flickered a few times. He didn't know whether he was thinking or something, but Zhang Yi was more willing to believe that the other party was judging whether he was lying. After a while, his red mouth made a sound. I understand, sir. If it's convenient, you can come and sit in the store for a while. You're lucky. I just received a text message from Barton. He said he would come over in the next few days for Ashley's support. Fee. Then excuse me. Zhang Yi smiled and nodded without refusing. Afterwards, the two of them and a robot walked towards the auto repair shop. Ashley kept a close eye on Zhang Yi the whole time. For some reason, the spider sense alarm in her body didn't stop from the moment she saw this man. Pass. Entering the auto repair shop, Zhang Yi finally saw Spider-Man's little daughter Tanya. She was a slightly fat black woman. I don't know if it was due to the environment or something else. She already had vicissitudes of life at this age, and she even had some white hair. However, the main credit came from Ashley, Zhang Yi guessed, plus the fact that she was supporting this auto repair shop by herself. The pressure on this woman was too great. No wonder she chose to spend the rest of her life with a robot after divorcing Barton. After learning about Zhang Yi's purpose, Tanya acted in a neutral manner. She poured Zhang Yi a glass of water, and then turned back to work. It seemed that she really didn't want to talk to Barton or Barton's friends. What's the relationship? Don't get me wrong, sir, Tanya has such a personality. Ultron number 8 stayed with Zhang Yi. I have to say that Ultron is quite friendly in dealing with people. His behavior are incompatible with the social environment of the wasteland. Ordinary people would have been bullied to death, but for some reason, this behavior is placed in the wasteland. This robot seems to have no sense of disobedience.